This week's episode of Teklian.TV is brought to you by TPS, TARDIS Postal Service, for when you absolutely need it shipped yesterday. Use the offer code TL713 for free last week's shipping.
Teklians, welcome to our 37th episode.
No, wait. We went back, remember? When your TARDIS, my TARDIS, we went back in time.
Oh, so that means we haven't...
No, not yet.
And the viewers, they
don't say anything else. You'll create a paradox. Spoilers.
The world. What about...
Saved. Don't worry the viewers.
Well, in that case, Teklians, welcome to our fourth?
Yep.
Yeah. Our fourth episode of Teklian.TV. Doctor Who through the years.
So, who's the Doctor?
Well, he's this time-traveling man, in a big blue box, and well, there's a lot to who the Doctor is. What is your opinion of the Doctor? How would you describe him?
I would describe him as being too big for my TARDIS.
Well, if it was bigger on the inside, he might be able to fit in, but getting in would be the problem.
Yeah, it's actually a cookie jar, and it's much bigger on the inside.
Are there any cookies?
I thought I ate them all, but every time I open it up, there's like 6,000 more cookies in there, and I'm like, where did these cookies come from?
Don't complain.
Yeah, can't complain about too many cookies.
The biggest problem that I would have with is who is the Doctor is, well, which one?
Yeah.
There's been 11 so far. Possibly 12, but we'll get to that. But 11 so far, and while there's small, minute similarities between them, they're each their own person. So who is the Doctor?
Who isn't he?
Yeah, it's a really hard question to answer.
So basically, he is an alien, looks human, or we look Time Lord. He has 2 hearts. I've heard a thing where they originally don't have 2 hearts. They don't get 2 hearts until their first regeneration. So the first Doctor actually had 1 heart.
I heard that too, and then I heard another rumor that the reason why the first Doctor had 1 heart was because he is half human, which was revealed in the 8th Doctor's movie, and that he didn't get his second heart till he regenerated for the first time and became like a full-fledged Time Lord after that. But I don't think there's any conclusive answer to that. Unless they did bring it up in the past episode I haven't seen.
Yeah. So this alien, this Time Lord, travels around in his TARDIS with a malfunctioning chameleon circuit, bigger on the inside. From the outside, it looks like a little box. It's supposed to do like a 12-dimensional survey or whatever.
Yeah, and it's supposed to blend in wherever he lands, point in time, location, with the surroundings. But the chameleon circuit is broken. That's what that little thing does.
Which I don't think I ever want him to fix it. Which I remember the 6th Doctor, I believe, was attempted to fix it. It actually blended in 1 out of the 3 times that it actually changed its appearance.
Yeah, but the TARDIS is his home, basically. I mean, he doesn't really have one planet that is his home. He doesn't have one place that it's the TARDIS.
It's like his RV.
RV across the universe and time.
Yeah.
I'd kill for an RV like that.
So basically, it's the most amazing ship in the universe, most powerful ship in the universe. Goes on forever. I really liked in the Journey to the Center of the TARDIS where we got to see more of the inside of it.
Yeah, and I've always wondered, like, I look at how great the TARDIS is, and I've always wondered, according to, like, his homeworld, Gallifrey and stuff, that's like a museum relic. Like, what do these new TARDISes have that one didn't?
Yeah, I would love to see a new model.
He could put anything in there, design any room that he wanted to have, whatever he wanted, and apparently that's an old model. That's a discontinued model, and it's like, how did they one-up that?
Yeah, for something that's supposed to be old, and wish they made cars like that. Go find an old relic car in a museum and try and drive it across the universe. So he regenerates. The Time Lord has 13 lives, which means 12 regenerations. A lot of people get confused with the amount of regenerations, and basically the 10th Doctor had used 9 regenerations. So the amount of regenerations used is always one number less than which Doctor it is. So, which there's issues with that we'll get to later. But so the first Doctor has used 0 regenerations. So William Hartnell.
Yeah, portrayed by William Hartnell. Honestly, what was your first impression of that Doctor? I've only seen a few of his serials. Back then, they had serials instead of episodes. It was about anywhere from like 2 to 10 episodes that made up one serial or one story, and I much preferred that. But
Yeah.
What was your first impression of William Hartnell?
Well, the first, I really haven't seen enough of his, and I really want to watch some more of his and some of the earlier Doctors. But first impression, I thought he was just grumpy old man.
Yeah, that's usually how he's described too. I actually did not like him the first time I saw one of his episodes. I grew to like his Doctor a little bit more. He never really became high on my list, but I definitely didn't like him. And the first episode I saw was his first episode, and I just wasn't a big fan of that one.
I think the first one that I watched was the Aztecs.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's I believe that's when they showed for the 50th anniversary special where they're doing one Doctor story every month.
Yeah.
I believe the Aztecs was one they chose. My personal favorite was the Dialects. I don't know if you've seen that one. The Dialects are one of the Doctor's biggest enemy, and the Dialects was the second serial of Doctor Who, and it was the first introduction to that species. And while there are some continuity issues between that episode and what has now been established as the Dialects timeline and their backstory, it really was just a good episode and a good way to introduce such an iconic, scary villain into the series.
Daleks are definitely one of the biggest, most iconic enemies of them all. I'd like to see more of how they were in the original classic series. I haven't seen enough of them.
I've been working my way through. Last year I got a pretty good chunk of the classics done, but I mean the biggest problem is the fact that BBC ruined or destroyed a whole bunch of episodes, mostly of the second Doctor, because at that time that's what they did. The tape was expensive at that time, so they would just tape over old tapes for new shows, and it's such a shame because it's now such an iconic show. At that time they didn't know it was going to become so big, and those episodes are now possibly lost forever.
Yeah, especially I really like the second Doctor too. He's definitely higher on my list.
Have you seen or heard anything about the Peter Cushing Doctor Who movies? And that's Dr. DR, abbreviated Who.
Yeah.
Have you seen any of them?
I saw one. I think it was can't remember which one it was now. I know it was something to do with the Daleks, and I started watching it, and I didn't really know enough about it, and I started watching it, and I was like, this isn't any of the Doctors that I know. Yeah. And I thought it was just some cheap, corny copy type of thing, and I actually stopped watching it because I thought I found a new episode that I hadn't, or a movie.
Apparently what it was like a spin-off movie of Doctor Who, where basically someone got the rights to try to take the popular Doctor Who stories while Doctor Who was still airing, it wasn't canceled or anything, and just try to tweak them and make them better, which I think didn't work at all.
No.
And there were 2 of them. They always based them off the Dialect stories. They never really based them off anything but that. That was supposed to be the only enemy. And the first one was called Doctor Who and the Dialects, and that was based off the serial The Dialects. And I actually have that one, and I think I made it through 30 minutes before I was like, this is garbage.
Yeah. This
is garbage. But apparently it did well enough to just barely get approved for a second movie, which was called Dialect Invasion of Earth 2150 AD. And that was just based off the serial Dialect Invasion of Earth. And they planned a third one called The Chase that was going to be based on the Dialect serial The Chase, but it never got made, and thank God. Because it kind of ruins the whole continuity of the show by just adding this second actor, completely different storyline. I mean, characters' names are the same, but other than that, it's nothing is really the same. They just took the idea.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to have 2 completely different things going at the exact same time.
And not only that, but if I recall in the movie, his name was actually Doctor Who, Whereas in the show, that's more of a question, Doctor Who, because he's just the Doctor. But apparently his name was Doctor Who, from what I recall, in these movies.
Yeah, there's always a huge debate on that. Like you see people arguing over that. People abbreviate it, and then other people correct it. And what are your thoughts on that?
I just get really annoyed when I see that, because we all know what you're talking about. Some people might not refer to it the same way as you do, but for instance, like, I agree it is the Doctor. Since, as far as the show goes, since the very first serial, he's been called the Doctor.
Right.
But I don't think people who call him Doctor Who are wrong, because for the first, what is it, five Doctors or something like that, they called him Doctor Who in the credits. That was how he was credited.
Yeah.
And then they did it again with the 9th Doctor, I believe, who was credited as Doctor Who. So I honestly don't see it wrong to call him Doctor Who when for about half the show that's how he was credited. So I just think we're all fans of the same show. We all know what they're talking about, so why argue over what they called it?
It seems like the general idea is that people who type it Dr. Dr. It seems like they're seen as the noobs, like the people that are new to the show, haven't learned that Doctor Who is the show based on the Doctor, the character. Yeah. And it seems like a lot of people, if somebody sees somebody abbreviating Doctor, then a lot of people instantly think, oh, you're new to the show, you don't know anything.
It's happened to me a couple times too, commenting on like posts or something about the new, and I'm not calling the Doctor Who in it, but I'm like referencing the show Doctor Who, but I'll like abbreviate Doctor just because I'm too lazy to type out Doctor. Yeah. People will comment and be like, it's Doctor, and spell it out, and it's like, it means the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm lazy. I've gotten in the habit. I just put DW now all the time. Just DW, Doctor Who.
Yeah, I mean, if you're referring to the show, I mean, I don't know. If you're referring to the show, then what's the big deal in abbreviating it? Because, you know.
Yeah. Patrick Troughton. He played the 2nd Doctor. The Doctor, he regenerates every time he dies, but the first time it happened was actually referred to as a renewal. So he was renewed, and a new actor took the Doctor's place, and that was Patrick Troughton. And he is probably my favorite Doctor. He wasn't the first or the second or even the third that I saw, but he is my favorite. He basically won my heart over. And the thing that really sucks is that most of his stories, more so than any other, were destroyed by the BBC. So there's very, very few remaining. But the ones that are really enjoyable. And if any of you haven't seen it, I would really highly recommend it.
I really love that. He's definitely one of my favorites too. Yeah. I mean, I think you see a lot of him in Matt Smith's Doctor.
Yeah, he actually brought out in an interview that he drew a lot of his character and performance from watching Patrick Troughton. That whole fun-loving, like, you know, running around, happy, but with a little bit of air of darkness. That's all in the 2nd Doctor too, and I just love it.
And the hands. He does the hands.
Yeah, the hands. Yeah.
You see the Doctor that always doing that with his hands.
I definitely, one of my favorite things about the 2nd Doctor was sort of the relationship the 2nd Doctor had with his companions Jamie and Zoe. He really had an extremely, extremely close relationship with them, almost like they were family. I mean, the Doctor always has a close relationship with his companions, but it's really a lot of times more of a, you know, in the older ones, sometimes a father figure or really like a best friend figure, but it was like a family association he had with those two. And you see that again with Matt Smith and Amy and Rory. Well, actually, they become family, but, you know.
Spoilers. Yeah, but I like, he was very fun. He was a big change from the previous Doctor. I mean,
yeah, the previous Doctor's this grumpy old man, and now it's just this fun-loving, let's go out and have an adventure.
Yeah, it was a big change. And the whole idea of regeneration was just brilliant. I mean, for them to think of that just because, you know, William didn't want to do the show anymore, and they thought, well, do we just stop doing the show, or do we poorly recast him and try to hope that nobody notices it's a different person? And to come up with the idea of he's an alien, let's make up an excuse of why he changed his appearances. And it was like the most genius way of recasting somebody that anybody has ever thought of, anybody will ever think of.
He was getting too sick and old. He was like going senile, I believe.
Yeah, which you definitely see in the 3 Doctors.
Yeah, he was forgetting his lines and stuff. He had
to read his lines off of cue cards off by the just off of the camera.
Yeah.
But just to be able to come up with that idea, I mean, because he is an alien, you can come up with a reason to recast him.
Exactly.
And it was brilliant. It was that single idea is the reason that the show was able to stick around so long. And shows getting old, well, recast, regenerate, reinvent the show.
And they've done that, 10 times now? 11 times? You've done quite a lot, and it's proved very effective and loved by the fans. That whole idea. When Patrick Troughton was finally, they changed the term to regeneration from renewal for the second Doctor. It kind of stuck. He was forced to regenerate as punishment for meddling in the affairs of other worlds by his species, the Time Lords.
It's kind of a weird punishment.
So what was it? The first Doctor, he just... How did they play off his death again? Was it just old age? Was it too much?
I think that's what it was. I think it was... I think he was just getting weak and just collapsed in one of the adventures, and I think the first Doctor regenerated due to old age.
Which was the first Doctor's really the only Doctor that ever lived his full life. All the other Doctors, they never lived really long enough to then again regenerate from old age. So I guess the Doctor, his activities when he was younger were not the same as when he got older. So second Doctor forced to regenerate, and he regenerates into the third Doctor, John Pertwee, where he's exiled to Earth, and his TARDIS is the control for it is like taken out, that it makes it so that he can't leave the time zone he was in, and he can't travel to other parts in time or space, which is why most of the third Doctor takes place on Earth. And I read that was because actually budget issues. They're like, how do we explain that we can't do all these effects and send him to other planets? And they're like, oh, well, make it that he's exiled. So what was your opinion of the third Doctor?
I don't know. I thought he was kind of weird. That's probably the best way of putting it. But then once I think that first episode with him where he stumbles out of the TARDIS and then he's kind of doesn't he like forget who he is for a moment?
I don't think he forgets who he is. I think he pretends he doesn't know who he is because he doesn't know where he is. He's in like some government base or something. And
I know the Brigadier doesn't recognize him, and
yeah, the Brigadier doesn't recognize him anymore. Doesn't believe him either when he says he's the Doctor because he looks completely different.
Yeah, I like the third Doctor though too.
Yeah, I never really knew how to describe how I feel about the third Doctor. It's not that I dislike him, it's just he's so different. He's charismatic, but he's still kind of old, but he's some karate hotshot, and he doesn't have any problem with using guns or weapons, which he's used several times in his stories, and I really don't know how to describe him.
Very eccentric too. His style.
Yeah, his style is just, he has that cape he wears sometimes, a little cape thing.
It's Dracula.
Yeah. I never saw the third Doctor's final story, but I believe, do you know what it was that ultimately caused him to regenerate?
I think he like fell off a building or something.
Yeah, that's possibly what it was.
I know I've seen clips of it, and I can't remember the episode exactly, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. It was that he fell off of something. Fourth Doctor.
Fourth Doctor, that's probably one of the most popular Doctors. No, it is the most popular and most loved.
The
Doctor
most popular.
To
majority of the fans, that is the Doctor.
I never really got too much into him, though. I mean, I like the serials I've seen, but
I really liked him.
The one thing I really liked at first about him was I haven't seen all of him, but I watched the whole first 2 seasons like in a row. And for the first season and a half, even though they did that thing where they split into the serials, the separate stories, they all follow one another. The first serial leads up to the second one, which leads them somewhere else where the third one takes place, which then results in them going somewhere else for the fourth one. It's like a continuous story the whole season, rather than each story being separate and then they go off somewhere else and they have a brand new story. That's one thing I really liked at the beginning with him.
I thought he was funny. He was hilarious. He was very playful. From what I've seen, I haven't seen all that much of each Doctor. He was especially when Romana came along and she was supposed to kind of watch him, keep an eye on him. She was supposed to be serious, and he was just kind of playful, didn't really care. And,
yeah, next to "Would you like a jelly baby?" I think one of the most famous lines he ever said from his series that I see quoted all the time is, "What's the point in being grown up if you can't be childish sometimes?"
Yeah, definitely.
It's so true, and it's a good insight into his thought of thinking and just the way his character was. I never saw any of the episodes with Romana 1. Romana was a Time Lord too, so she also later regenerated, and it's called Romana 2. I saw lots with her, and she, from what I understand, Romana 1 was really strict, and she was there to monitor the Doctor, and then when she regenerated, she became more like the Doctor. She saw the good in the Doctor, and she kind of tried to be like him, which is why she had a pink scarf, I believe, or something like that, kind of like the Doctor had his long, colorful scarf.
Yeah. There was an episode with I think it was the first one with Romana, where they're traveling somewhere, and she goes over to the TARDIS console. She wants to make sure that it's safe for them to go outside, and tells him to wait and you need to check the atmosphere. And he just goes over, opens the doors, looks outside, and says, "It's nice out."
Yeah.
She's so by the book, and there's talks about how he only went through so much. He didn't graduate Time Lord Academy and all this stuff that he would have learned. She's like the bookworm Time Lord, and he's the street smarts Time Lord. He's kind of you may learn from your books, but I learn by just doing.
And I know he portrayed the Doctor longer than any other actor. He had 7 seasons, which
This is insane.
The only one who came close to that, I believe, was the 3rd Doctor, who I think had 5, if I recall. But that is insane. 7 seasons. I think it spanned over 8 years.
Think about the current rebooted series. It's now just completed 7 seasons. Yeah. Imagine everything we've seen from the new rebooted series. Imagine that all being the same Doctor.
Yeah, that's how long he was a Doctor for, and it really was insane. And I see a lot of people saying, "Oh, I hope we have another Doctor that does it as long as Tom Baker," and I just don't see that happening.
Yeah.
He was the Doctor for so long, and he was such an iconic image, and just these days, like even Matt Smith, he said that his time's up. He just feels his time is up, and I think finding an actor who would want to do it that long, with all the fame that comes with it, and I mean, your life when an actor's playing the Doctor because it's such a popular role and such a popular show. I mean, they get the paparazzi and stuff. I mean, they don't want to deal with that their whole life. They don't want to. They love doing it. They love the fans, but it does take a lot out of them. It is a lot of stress.
All the work that goes in, especially now, everything is so high production, movie quality. I mean, you watch you watch Tom Baker's episodes, and it's like you can just the sound and the way everything looks like this is just a set.
Yeah.
And it's like with the new series, you're watching it and it's just it's convincing.
Like a movie.
Yeah, it's movie quality, and like all of the work that goes into it, and got to take a lot out of them.
Their budget is insane. The budget for each episode is like multi-millions.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money to spend on each episode. I mean, and they definitely do a good job with the budget they're given. They definitely do a fantastic job.
That they do. Have you seen a lot of the 5th Doctor's episodes?
I finished the 5th Doctor. It's one of the few classic Doctors that I've actually watched all of. For a while, until I watched the 2nd Doctor, he was one of my favorite Doctors.
I haven't really seen much of his.
My favorite thing about the 5th Doctor, well, first off, every time the Doctor regenerates, he changes his clothes. The 4th Doctor was known for his long scarf. The 5th Doctor wears a cricket uniform, which is a cricket uniform with like a dress coat over it, which is very different, but it does look kind of good. And he later on adds a stalk of celery to like the lapel of his jacket or something, which I never really understood.
Yeah, there was the episode, I think it was the caves one. Someone asked him about it, and he said that it turns blue if he's exposed to a certain gas that he's allergic to. Then they asked, well, then what do you do? And he's like, then I eat the celery.
Oh. Yeah, but one of my favorite things about Peter Davison is, like all the Doctors, he absolutely, he has his companions. The Doctor always has a companion, and he is really close with his companions. But at the same time, his interest to learn more, his interest to explore, sometimes overcomes that. There's so many times with the 5th Doctor, so many times in episodes I've seen, where he like just goes off. He just goes off and completely leaves his companion behind, and then like you'll be 2 episodes into the serial and you'll be like, hey, where's Tegan? And Tegan's been like in trouble for the last 2 episodes, lost away, and he has to go save her. And it's just, it really shows you, he was such a fun-loving Doctor that just wanted to learn, wanted to go off and have adventures, and I really liked it about him. For him, it was all about the exploration and the experience, and he just loved, like Tom Baker, he kind of enjoyed having fun doing those things. He like kind of wanted to get into things. He went looking for like just areas to just go and see what's going on.
He went looking for trouble.
And then I believe he got some type of poisoning, and that led to his regeneration into the Sixth Doctor.
Yeah, where he only had enough antidote for one.
Yeah, and he gave it to his companion.
My first impression with the Sixth Doctor right after that regeneration, that first impression kind of made me not like him. I'm not a big fan of the Sixth Doctor, and I think a lot of people weren't. I think that Doctor, he was meant to be more, I don't know, arrogant, aggressive.
He was very
cocky.
Arrogant, very aggressive. He was a little bit darker than some of the past Doctors. As far as classic Doctors go, I think he was one of the darkest. I didn't like him either. I didn't like how his first reaction, the very first thing you see as it was a Doctor, is him choking the companion. And the Fifth Doctor just used the last of the antidote to save, so it resulted in him himself regenerating. I know, actually, I think the show got canceled or something for like a year after he was the Doctor, and that's why it was like only 2 seasons.
I think they kind of changed his personality, and I saw an episode with the Sixth and the Second Doctor, and he was a lot better then. I don't know if that was after the fact.
Yeah, that was their 20th anniversary special, I think, the 2 Doctors. That was actually a good one because I really enjoyed seeing Patrick Troughton back in the picture.
Yeah,
but
they could have dyed his hair though.
Yeah, a little bit.
He had quite a bit of gray hair. Doesn't really make sense with time travel.
Which is one reason why it's so hard for them to bring classic Doctors back to the new series, which I know a lot of people want to see, including myself, but it is really hard to explain. I mean, a lot of them, not just their hair beyond dying, a lot of them just look older, wrinkles, a little bit bigger, just
old in general. I personally wouldn't mind a very, very clever recast, a very convincing recast,
Sort of like when they used, I can't recall the actor's name right now, but when they recast someone to play the first Doctor in the 5 Doctors. Right.
I mean, I think to see a very convincing 4th Doctor or 2nd Doctor, if they did like for a 50th anniversary thing, if they had all of them back and they recast, I mean, they'd have to recast, all of them pretty much.
Yeah.
Paul might be able to pull it off.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Possibly. One other thing about the 6th Doctor, and they never really explain this. I don't know if it's something that definitely happens and there was something that caused it not to happen, or if it's just can be something that has happened but there's no explanation to it. But every time, with the exception of that regeneration, when the Doctor regenerated, he got younger. From the first to the second, he was younger. From the second to the third, he was younger. From the third to the fourth to the fifth, he was a lot younger. And Peter Davison was the first really young Doctor. But then when he went from 5th to 6th, he got older. And then 6th to 7th younger, 7th to 8th younger, and he keeps getting younger every time he regenerates his appearance. But that one step from 5th to 6th, though, was the one and only time where his regeneration actually got older. The actor portraying him was older than the previous, and looked older.
I've heard people say that they want to see another older Doctor, which would be cool, but I mean, I think the whole thing with the regeneration, the whole him getting younger, is that it's renewing every single cell in your body. So, I mean, you have new cells, they're going to be newer, I mean, I think a whole new set of newer cells, I think it's going to gradually make you look younger.
And personally, I wouldn't really mind seeing an older Doctor, but not like a grandfather old like the first Doctor. I mean, if they were going to go older, maybe, not personality-wise, but maybe about the age of the 7th or 6th Doctor, But I wouldn't really want to see them go much older than that. I like the action that's in the new Doctor Who's, and I would like them to see them keep that. If they go too old, they might have trouble doing that sometimes.
Yeah, you want to keep them away from injuries. You don't want your Doctor breaking his hip.
Mm-hmm. Now, one thing though about the 6th Doctor, I wasn't a big fan of him, but his whole entire season was a story, and that was the story of Trial of a Time Lord, where he was in trial. And it's revealed at the end that the person that's putting him on trial is the Valeyard. Do you know what the Valeyard is?
It's a manifestation. It's not actually the Doctor. It's not that person. It's a manifestation. So he's like an anomaly in space and time. It's basically between his, as it's quoted in the show, between his 12th and final incarnation, meaning between his 12th and 13th. Between the 12th and 13th. Basically, the 12th Doctor comes along, and it's supposed to be very dark. I mean, you look at all the crap that he's been going through just the past few Doctors. and like all of the horrible things he's seen and done, and and just all of his darkness building up. And then as he regenerates from the 12th to the 13th Doctor, something happens and causes this manifestation, and this manifestation comes along, and he's a separate entity from the Doctor, and he basically, I believe it is because he is like kind of a branch off of him, that they both now have that remaining regeneration. So now the Doctor on his 13th life, that's his last regeneration, but the Valeyard, because he split off from the 12th Doctor, either only has that one regeneration, or he's considered a branch of the 13th, something like that. But basically, he goes back in time during the 6th Doctor's time, and he tries to punish the 6th Doctor. Basically, he wants to go back in time and steal the Doctor's remaining regeneration so that the Valeyard can live on with the Doctor's past regenerations, which would cause problems with the timeline, because if he goes back, steals the remaining regenerations from the 6th Doctor, then the 6th Doctor dies. So the 6th Doctor never made it to 12 to manifest it. So it's just because he's an anomaly and, wibbly wobbly stuff.
Timey-wimey. But yeah, that's basically what we know of the Valeyard so far. I know, myself included, a lot of people are hoping he's later on brought back. They really do something with him after the 12th Doctor, which is coming up. We'll talk about that near the end of the show.
I'd like to see someone. I'd like them to bring the Valeyard back. My wife and I were talking about this the other day. You know who we think would do really well at playing the Valeyard?
Who?
I can't think of his last name. He plays Loki in the Avengers.
Oh, I can't think of the name either, but I know I see people talking about him all the time.
I completely forgot his name just now.
Yeah, he would, though, do an insane job as the Valeyard. Tom Hiddleston or something like that? Hiddleston? I don't know.
Hiddleston.
Yeah, Hiddleston. Yeah, he, honestly, that's actually a good point. You just picture Loki in the Valeyard.
Yeah. I think it's the costume, I think.
Possibly, but
the big collar, the green. I picture Loki. I would like to see him as the Valeyard.
Yeah, that would be a really good job. Before we go to the 7th Doctor, one thing that I thought was interesting about the 6th Doctor was the actor that portrayed him, Colin Baker, was actually in a previous episode of Doctor Who.
Really?
Yeah, he was in an episode of Doctor Who with, I believe it was the 5th Doctor, and he had to go. The Doctor was back on Gallifrey trying to stop the High Council President King thing, whatever, of Gallifrey from being assassinated, and his character was actually trying to kill or arrest or even kill the Doctor. So it's kind of weird how later on they actually cast him as the Doctor.
That is pretty funny.
I think that I believe it was David Tennant, I'm not positive, was also in prior Doctor Who stories before becoming the Doctor. But it was audio stories, or it was just his voice being blended, I think. Or maybe it was Paul McGann. It was one of the newer Doctors, but they did audio stories for Doctor Who before becoming the Doctor.
I know Paul McGann did a lot of audio. I actually have some of the audio books, and a lot of the 8th Doctor adventure books that I haven't actually read yet. There was, but that was after his thing.
Yeah, I've actually been meaning. I haven't really seen anything with the 8th Doctor beyond the movie. I've been meaning to get into it some more, find out more about that Doctor. But we'll get to that, I guess, when we get to the 8th Doctor. Have you seen a lot of the 7th Doctor, Sylvester McCoy?
I haven't, and I have a hard time seeing him as the Doctor. Something about him.
I feel the same way. I've only seen 1.5 of the serials. I have all 3 of his seasons, but I have a hard time seeing him as Doctor too. I see him as a good actor. I think he does a good job.
I can't see him as the Doctor.
Exactly. I have the same issue.
I was my wife and I were like, they added a bunch of like classic Doctor Who episodes to Netflix, and we were kind of jumping around watching some of them, some of the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th Doctors, and I went to watch one of them, and I put one of them on, and it was the 7th Doctor. I can't remember what episode it was, but basically they walked out of the TARDIS. It's some like army thing. I don't know. There was fighting and guns. That's all I know. But they walk out, and he's walking with his cane, and she was like, "That's the Doctor?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then like a few minutes went by, and we were kind of just like looking at each other, and then we were like, You want to watch a different one?
Yeah.
And we went back to watching some of the older Fourth Doctor stuff. We were like, we couldn't get into it. I don't know what it was.
I know with him, his most popular companion was Ace. I know she's actually a very popular companion as far as the whole classic Who goes, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I wasn't a big fan of her either. I know I watched almost a whole serial last night of the last serial for Seventh Doctor, and she kept switching. Sometimes she'd call him Doctor, then she'd call him Professor, and I don't understand. I didn't really get that. I don't know if maybe I missed something. He was going by like the Professor earlier on because she only did it for the first like serial and a half, and then she started calling him Doctor, or first episode and a half, but. That confused me as well, why she was calling him Professor, but I wasn't a big fan of either of them. I haven't seen much of the Seventh Doctor, so I can't. I mean, I've only seen a very, very little bit actually, so I can't really give an accurate opinion. But what I've seen, I wasn't really a fan of.
The whole Professor thing confused me too, and I kind of wanted to watch more of them to try to understand why we should call him Professor, but I guess I just have to suck it up and watch more.
And then after the Seventh Doctor, the show was canceled.
For a long time. 10 years, wasn't it?
1989, and almost 10 years. I believe it was.
The movie came out in 99.
98 was it? I think.
Was it?
I believe it was 98. I could be wrong.
I think it was 98, but it took place in 99 because of the whole New Year's thing that was going on.
It took place during the New Year's of 99 to 2000. But yeah, that was almost 10 years. During that time, they still had audiobooks and stuff coming out, like the radio audio shows, but there was nothing on TV during that whole time. And then we had the Eighth Doctor, and that was produced, what was it, like Americanized version of the Doctor.
Yeah.
Whereas they wanted the rights to Doctor Who, but they didn't want to start all over, so they're just like, oh, we'll jump right in with the Eighth Doctor, and the movie sucked. The movie just fracking sucked. I didn't like almost any of it. But on the other hand, I loved Paul McGann. He is probably like tied with Matt Smith for my second favorite Doctor.
I really like that Doctor.
Well, I thought the plot of the movie sucked. I think the job that McGann did playing the Doctor and the way he portrayed the Doctor, just everything about him was just spot on. Like, I saw him as the Doctor. Just
right away.
Yeah. And I really, with him being a lot younger than the classic Doctors, I really do see it possible as bringing him back. And I was kind of hoping they would for the 50th, but they say they didn't. Maybe they're lying, but...
Yeah, he's on board with it. I mean, he's posted things and answered questions that he's...
But yeah, I really would like to see more of him. He definitely was, I think, a great Doctor, and I don't think he should be let down because the Americanized story that was written for him was just garbage. I really do hope to see, and I should start reading and listening to some of his audio stories because I want to know more about him.
Yeah, I got there are tons of them on Amazon, and there was this huge sale a while back, and I actually just went ahead and I can't even remember how many there were. There were tons of them, probably dozens that I got, and it literally picks up right where the movie left off. Like, he had just gotten in his TARDIS and left at the end of the movie, and then the book starts right after that. He passes out or something in his TARDIS. He wakes up, he finds a mirror, and he's freaks him out because he sees somebody in his TARDIS that he doesn't know who they are, and then he realizes that that's him. So it's it picks up right after that. You see his it goes through his whole reaction of figuring out what he looks like now.
Now, but after the Eighth Doctor, we get to the Ninth. But before that, the Time War. That's
big mystery.
One of the biggest plot twists ever added to the show, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, next to the idea of regenerations, this is the next biggest thing added to the show. It's
definitely, it changes everything. From that point on, everything is different. Everything you've known, everything. I mean, the previous Doctors, he was able to get help from Gallifrey all the time. You always saw them, Yeah. He could land on Gallifrey.
And they're always kind of keeping a watchful eye on him too.
Yeah. Now
they knew he was mischievous.
Now it's just no more Gallifrey, no more Time Lords, no more help.
The great thing about the Time War is, and I really hope they don't explain too much about it, is that we don't know much about it.
Exactly.
The Time War was such a game-changing thing for the show, but all we know about it is it was a war through time between the Time Lords and the Daleks, and the Doctor ended it by completely time-locking and destroying the Time Lords and the Daleks. Although the Daleks did later escape. But.
That's That's got to be horrible for him too. I mean, imagine that you just did something to sacrifice all of your people.
Yeah.
Everything about your past and your history is now destroyed, and you risk that to defeat your greatest enemy. Well, your enemy's fine.
Yeah.
They're still out there. There's still billions of them.
But it wasn't the reason for why he destroyed his people was because they were going to do something that would essentially destroy like the universe or something as we know it and leave the Time Lords as the only surviving species or something like that.
I think it was like they gotten so full of themselves, like they've seen themselves as like the authority of the universe, and like they're just better than everybody else. And I think the Doctor was kind of seeing them that they were much of a threat to the rest of the universe as the Daleks were.
And you really did see during the classic Doctor Who the every time the Doctor mentioned Gallifrey, the Gallifreyans and the other Time Lords really were a lot more arrogant. Every time the Doctor regenerated, you saw him do something in Gallifrey. Every time it showed them as more arrogant, and then the Doctor gets rid of them all. I mean, he is the last of his kind.
The other great thing about the Time War is you can bring in a new twist to the story, and you can connect it to the Time War because we know nothing about it. I remember there was the episode with I think it was the End of Time episode, the end of the 10th Doctors. They mentioned things like the Nightmare Child and Army of whatever, something that never were, and it's like these things that they mentioned from the Time War. It's like you can just mention some horrific enemy, and you never have to actually see them. You just say that happened during the Time War.
Although I really do want to see something with the Nightmare Child, like just that name makes me want to.
Yeah, so rescue Davros from the jaws of the Nightmare Child. Well, now we want to see what the Nightmare Child is.
Yeah, I picture like some anomaly in space or something that's like living or something. I don't know, but it's just.
I think of like this giant like planet-sized thing. Like you haven't watched Farscape, have you?
Not yet. I haven't gotten to that.
Because there's this thing, I can't remember what it's called, but there's this creature in Farscape where it's literally like the size of a planet. It's this creature that just flies through space. Like think of the like star whale in Doctor Who, like something like that, where it's this big creature. But basically, like they land on it and it's dead, and it's just this big skeleton. But they actually, you see the ship, and the ship is insanely massive. It's like, think of like Starship Enterprise. It's freaking huge, and then you see like from side view, and it's flying into this skull, like this dead mouth, and it's this tiny little thing, and they're just flying into it, and then it basically has its own gravity, its own atmosphere. But it's this that's something like what I think of when I think of Nightmare Child.
I also kind of think something sort of like in the 11th Doctor, the episode The Rings of Akhaten, where they have that planet-sized living entity.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not. They can't like land on it. It's not physical. It's more like almost like a sun almost. But they're like sacrificing themselves to the planet so the planet won't kill them all or something like that. And it's just that sort of, I picture like a creature sort of like that when I picture the Nightmare Child. That's another thing. The Time War was a lot of. It wasn't really just the Daleks and the Time Lords. I mean, that was the main concept. But from what I understand, it was a lot of a whole bunch of evil creatures, just dark things happening.
Pretty much. That's what I picture. That's why it's like it's such a big important thing, even though you don't see anything about it. You don't get to see it.
And you really see how it affects the Doctor right away with the Ninth Doctor. Ninth Doctor, Christopher Eccleston. Right away, you see a completely new Doctor, completely darker, and completely affected by the events of the Time War.
Yeah, he was ruined basically by the Time War. I mean, he had a hell of a burden after whatever happened during it. You just saw that he was just tortured by it.
He only lasted one season. I mean, next to the Eighth Doctor, he was a Doctor for the least amount of time. The Eighth Doctor had one movie. He had one season. But overall, I think he did a great job.
Yeah, he did.
I know he didn't do more seasons because he didn't like the fame and popularity that came with it. He was he was a known actor, but a smaller actor before he did Doctor Who. And he also had some differences with some people on the set.
I heard he didn't want to be known for that. Like he didn't want to be in another movie or another show or something, and people see him as the Doctor, like, and can't see him as somebody else. I remember Tom Baker actually said that Doctor Who ruined his career because after doing Doctor Who, there was I didn't want to do anything else. It was kind of like, what do you do after that?
Nothing could be that big.
Nothing's going to compare to that. And he said that he got a lot of roles where people wanted him to play the role like he played the Fourth Doctor. So it was like he couldn't get away from it.
And I know, even with having done one season, I still know he's known for his role as a Doctor now. I mean, he didn't want that to happen. It's not as big maybe as other ones, but I've seen people talking online like, oh yeah, it has the Ninth Doctor in it, and it's like about movies that he's been in, and it's like maybe not that big, but still a lot of times he is referred to as, oh, it's the Ninth Doctor that's in it, rather than Christopher Eccleston that's in it.
Yeah. Well, you could arguably say that Ninth Doctor is easier to say.
Yeah, true.
Have you seen Heroes? He was in Heroes.
I have not seen Heroes. I
yeah,
know
that's what we saw him and we were like, hey, it's the Ninth Doctor.
I'm looking forward to Thor 2. He plays the enemy, so I'm looking forward to seeing him in that. I'm hoping, though, I know Matt Smith, he's going to be ending his tenure soon, and I know he wants to go on to Hollywood and do some movies, and I honestly think he's going to do a good job of separating his character from what we know as the Doctor, because have you seen any of his movies yet? I know he has one coming out not pretty soon.
I haven't. I've seen little clips of a movie or a show that he had done before he was the Doctor, where it had him and Billy Piper in it.
Oh, yeah.
And I saw little clips of that. And
yeah, what was it? Something, Adventures of a Call Girl or something, where like they slept together or whatever. But no, he actually did a movie. Let me see. I believe it was while he was the Doctor. Maybe it was right before. When did he take over as the Doctor? Was that 2009?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, because in 2010 he did a movie called The Womb, which was really just a fracked up movie. But he did such a great job. I watched it after I had already seen the first 2 seasons of Doctor Who, and I did not see the Doctor while watching it. Like, he did such a good job of being somebody else. And
he was 2010.
It was 2010?
Yeah.
All right, so maybe it was right before then he was the Doctor. But still, I think he's going to do a good job separating himself from the role he created as the Doctor in his future. Sort of like, not to go into a completely different fandom here, but I know the Harry Potter movies, Daniel Radcliffe, I didn't think I could ever see him as anyone besides Harry Potter after watching all those movies and him doing it for, what was it, like 10 years or something like that.
Yeah.
But then he did that movie Woman in Black or something like that, and right away, from the very first minute, he's not Harry Potter anymore. And I think Matt Smith's going to do the same thing, and I wish him luck, because I know that's what he really wants, is to go on and do more beyond Doctor Who, and he wants to do more in Hollywood.
Yeah, I think he would do great at that. He just seeing it, not to skip over the 10th Doctor, we're going to go back to him, but just seeing the 11th Doctor and just the different, he does an amazing, in one single episode, you can see him be the most hilarious, fun, playful person you've ever seen, to instantly being now the scariest person you don't ever want to screw with, because he looks like he will just destroy everything about your timeline.
And it really is, that really is how he does, and it's just, he has a lot of skill. He's definitely one of my favorite Doctors, and we'll talk more about him when we get to him. We're at the 10th Doctor now, I believe, and probably currently one of the most popular today. I mean, Tom Baker for classics is the most popular, but today I think when people hear Doctor Who, I think David Tennant right now is one of the faces and names that they bring up.
Yeah, I mean, Matt Smith has grown on me, but when I hear the Doctor, the first thing I think of is the pinstripe suit.
Yeah.
The sticky uppy hair. That's the first thing that comes to mind.
I personally, as far as the 10th Doctor goes, I think he's great. He's also right up there with my top Doctors, and I couldn't think of anyone better than him for that role. But and I know I'm one of the very, very few in this, but I never liked Rose. I never liked her. The very first episode of Doctor Who I ever saw was Satan's Pit or something like that. And I love the idea of that episode, but I actually stopped watching it when it was first on. I watched it years ago. It was while it was airing on it was on Sci-Fi Channel or whatever. It was just a couple weeks after it had aired in Britain, and I stopped watching it. I watched like first 15 minutes, and then I didn't even see Doctor Who on TV again for years, and that was when I watched the episode. What it was the episode with Karen Gillian, but with the 10th Doctor. And
the Fires of Pompeii.
Yeah, Fires of Pompeii. That was the first full episode of Doctor Who I ever watched, and that's the one that got me hooked. I love Donna. I love the 10th Doctor. I thought the episode was amazing, and that's when I went back and started watching them. So I haven't really been watching the show for that long, but I caught up really quickly. I got hooked really quickly. Actually, that one episode hooked me. That one episode, right then, I was like, I'm going to love this show. And I went back and I started with the 9th Doctor. I found out where it started, and I just went on.
I didn't start watching it until probably Matt Smith's first season was almost finished or had finished.
Yeah, that's when I started watching it. Matt Smith's first season was when I started watching it all the time. When his first episode came out, like I had been waiting for it because I'd been kind of catching up on episodes here and there. I haven't watched all the 10th. I wasn't watching them as they aired. And then with Matt Smith, it was the first time that the episodes were going to air on the same day in America that they were airing in Britain. So that was the first time I was really able to actually follow it. And so it was his first season where I started watching it every day. And before that, I was just watching episodes when I saw them on TV because I didn't own any of them at the time or have any of them. But I guess in a way, that's kind of why I like him so much, because at the time I started watching him, I had only seen 6 or 7 of the 10th Doctor and 2 or 3 of the 9th maybe. Because I was just watching them as they happened to show on TV, and that was the first time they were showing the Doctor as they aired in Britain as well. So,
yeah, the most recent season 7, that's the first season that I actually was watching them as they aired, because like I started watching them. Like I said, Matt Smith's first season was probably just finishing, and so basically I started watching the show, and I already knew who the next 2 Doctors were going to be. So I was watching them by myself because I thought my wife probably wouldn't be too into this sci-fi show. So I started watching it, and then it got to the episode Father's Day, and I thought like that up until that, like before then it seemed like this cheesy show. I mean, for the times, like they're trying to bring Doctor Who into more cooler modern times, I guess. I mean, with the leather jacket, I think the 9th Doctor is probably one of the worst dressed Doctors as far as Doctors go.
Without a doubt.
Some things could be said about Colin Baker's outfit, but
yeah,
for the time and for the character, you know, that if you know the Doctor and you look at that outfit, you're gonna look and be like, okay. But I mean, when you look at his outfit previously, and then you look at the 9th Doctor, and you're just like, really? Leather jacket? That's it? Just a leather jacket and some jeans?
No, the 8th Doctor was my favorite dressed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
He had style.
Yeah, he like I was watching the beginning, like with the first season with the 9th Doctor, and it like just the music was super cheesy. And then it got to Father's Day, and it was like a very serious, and it was very it was a different side of the show than I had been previously seeing in the earlier episodes of that season. And it was when I got to that episode, I was like, this is pretty cool, actually. So I was like telling my wife about it, like, and I was telling her about the episode, and I was like, this episode was actually really cool, and I was telling her about it, and then I was like, you want to watch it? So we started watching it over again, and then when I started watching it over again with her, I saw those episodes very differently than I did the first time I watched it, just because I knew I just started seeing the Doctor and the whole story differently now after seeing that episode. Something about that episode that it just made me look at it very differently.
Yeah, and I know with my wife, I didn't tell her about the show right away either. I didn't think she doesn't like almost anything sci-fi. Actually, Doctor Who is the only sci-fi I've ever been able to get her to watch. And when I saw the 11th Doctor was when I decided to like introduce her to it. But she's okay with the 9th Doctor. She watches it. She likes it. She's very picky. The 10th Doctor, she loves Donna. She won't watch any of the 10th Doctor, the Rose. I think she dislikes Rose more than I do. But she thought Martha was like she kind of saw Martha as the rebound. She saw Martha as like the rebound companion. Like she never really saw Tennant as like someone who was really a companion to Martha. More like he was just trying to replace Rose, and it was like, oh, this isn't working out. And then Martha left. But
See, I didn't have really a problem with Rose. Like I mean, when you look at the whole spectrum of the show and everything, like she does think she's a lot more important than she really is. She thinks she's more significant, but I mean, her and the 10th Doctor I see very differently, just because of how he was when they met. During the 9th Doctor, he was very rough and very, had this weight on him. And then the 10th Doctor comes along and he was more playful, and it's like, to me, they complemented each other. I mean, they both seemed very playful, and so I didn't really have much of a problem with her, other than just you're not that special. I mean, he has spent more time with past companions than you've been alive.
yeah. Now the 10th Doctor's regeneration. I mean, that was the first time we ever saw really the Doctor upset about regenerating. He was crying. I mean, he didn't want to regenerate. And I've seen a lot of people say things along the lines of, well, what's the problem? He's not dying. He's not, he's just going to have a new body, but he is dying. That's the whole thing. I mean, he's not just going to have a new set of looks. It's going to be a whole new personality, a whole new demeanor. Everything about him is going to change except for his memories. It's basically like me saying, I'm going to put all your memories in another body, but you're going to be dead. It's like, wouldn't you be upset?
Exactly.
I mean, you're all that's living on is your memories, not you.
I mean, I think it's that personality change that does it. It's you still have all the same memories, but being completely changing a different personality, you're going to look back and it's like, that's not me.
Yeah.
Like as he said that, everything about me dies and some new man saunters away. And I've heard complaints about how they made it too. I saw this thing. It was talking about how they kind of built it up so much, like they made people dislike Matt Smith because they made it so emotional to see David Tennant go that so many people didn't want to see him go.
Yeah.
And so it made it harder for people to, because the past regenerations, it was just, oh, I've changed, let's move on. Then they kind of dragged that out and made it, I mean...
David Tennant had 3 seasons, but then he had that whole year where they came out with a special like every 2 months or something. And that whole like year of specials was kind of just drawing it out. He knew it was coming. He was like hiding from it because what was it? The Ood had told him the end was coming or whatever. And he was going off and doing all this other stuff instead, trying to delay the end. And
always trying to put it off.
I agree that's it drew it out a lot and made a lot of fans so unwilling to accept a new Doctor.
Yeah, because it was like it was so like over dramatized than from previous regenerations, like even he was crying in the TARDIS and the whole I don't want to go and then he changed it and now all of a sudden it's like you didn't want that to happen but now here's a new guy.
One thing I really did love about the 11th Doctor was the story arc that Stephen Moffat created. I mean, Stephen Moffat did a lot of wonderful things. There are a few things I didn't like, but he created a story arc that spanned from the very first episode of Doctor Who all the way to the very last one we saw and leading up to the 50th anniversary, which is basically it spanned the entire history of the 11th Doctor. And it started with, I mean, it was very subtle in the first episode, in the first season, but very first episode, right before that shape-shifting creature gets taken by I can't remember the aliens right now with the big eyeballs on our ships.
Atraxi.
Yeah, the Atraxi. Right before they get taken back to the ship, the creature says to him, "Silence will fall." I mean, the silence weren't even in the first season. That wasn't until the second. But you that very first episode, "Silence will fall." It's like, what does that mean? You don't even find out at all for a while. And I think that that was one of the great things is that huge encompassing story arc. Silence will fall, and then later on you learn Silence will fall at the Fields of Trenzalore. And you get to the very last episode we just saw before the 50th, and it's on the Fields of Trenzalore. And it all is one big story.
It's basically what's going on right now when it comes back. It is what has been set up since the very first episode with Matt Smith.
Yeah.
It's just crazy to see something that had been set up for that long, that we were told right when the very first time we saw Matt Smith that silence will fall. Then we find out silence will fall on the fields of Trenzalore, the fall of the 11th, and then that's where we are.
No, it really is like you also, silence will fall, and then you learn silence is like a group of people that want to stop the Doctor from revealing his name. And then later on you learn that while it's also a group of people, there's also a race of aliens known as the Silence. And just...
Which I think really, we never actually know like what they're called. I think it was that like everybody knows them as the Silence, but it's like that wasn't like the species. I don't think we ever know what the species is called.
They were just part of the Silence. And the whole point of that was to silence the Doctor. Quick recap, the first season of Doctor Who, that was all leading up to the Pandorica, and how all of his meddling time, his traveling through time, is leaving these cracks in the universe.
Yeah.
And the cracks were formed by his TARDIS exploding, and
that part I'm kind of confused of. Like, there's this list I've seen somewhere where there's like all of these things that haven't been explained yet. Like the whole thing with the cracks in the universe was because of the TARDIS exploding. Why did the TARDIS explode?
Yeah.
It was something to do with the silence. Wasn't it also, the silence did something to the TARDIS to cause it to explode because they were trying to kill him?
They were trying to stop him originally, I believe. But I don't know what caused it. I don't think they ever explained that. Yeah. But also, the TARDIS exploding is what caused the cracks in the universe and what was ultimately destroying the universe. But at the same time, I believe the TARDIS had exploded twice before in Classic Who. I know it exploded once with the second Doctor. And I believe it happened a second time, but I'm not 100% positive. But I mean, why is it this time it was like universe-ending explosion?
Yeah. I do love the story arcs, though. And then it was fun, like, with the 9th and 10th Doctors. It was more like little one-off episodes, and occasionally something would come back, like Bad Wolf, and something would be reoccurring and everything. But just the whole... having something in the background that like the cracks, that was throughout the whole. I mean, you're still having some of these little one-off episodes, but at the same time there's things going on. I mean, like with River, I mean, it's only a few episodes into the 11th Doctor's episodes where you get to see River again, and she is a story arc all on its own. That character is one big story arc, and you're still... This is now the second time you've seen her, and you still have no clue who she is. And the last time, and the first and previous time you saw her die. Here she is again, so it's like, what's going on? So that's a major story arc right there. And then you have the Angels. They came back in that episode, and then there was the Cracks. And the Cracks, I mean, all three of these things that were big story arcs in there, and they were all related. But they all seemed kind of random. I mean, it was like, oh, hey, River's back. And hey, there's a crack. And that came in useful, got rid of all the Angels. But it's like there was so many things that you see in that first season. And like the one-off stories were fun, but when there's something in the background and it's like just saw this, there's this whole story that just happened, and then you're like, wait a minute. Does that have something to do with that? And are we going to see something else later? It's like, it's fun. It's more to look forward to, you know?
Yeah, and Stephen Moffat did a really good job of writing in that kind of story arc in the background. I mean, I know there are a lot of people that don't like some of the things he's done, but whether or not you like what he's done, you have to admit what he did was really masterful the way he wrote it in. Whether or not you like the idea behind it, you have to admit it's just masterful.
It gets you more committed into the show, I think.
I do want to issue a warning before we go on any further. Next, we're going to be talking about the final season of Matt Smith and some stuff that happened in his very last episode, as well as the departure of the Pawns. So if you haven't seen that yet, I suggest you skip the rest of the video and just check the description for our hat tip of the week. Just want to get that out there. Spoilers are coming up.
Big spoilers. So if you haven't seen it, here's a picture of an adipose. Not a picture. This is an actual adipose. Not an actual adipose. This is a toy adipose. Here's an adipose. Look at the cute little adipose.
He's waving bye, so if you don't want spoilers, see you later.
Get out of here.
All right. Real quick, let's go over the departure of the Pawns. They were there from the beginning. They were the 11th Doctor's companions. Jenna was only there for a couple episodes. She was one of his companions, but I'm sure she'll be a lot more important when we move on to the 12th Doctor. Amy and Rory were the 11th Doctor's companions. They were his family.
Definitely. Like he was kind of back to having that family in the TARDIS.
How did you feel about the way that they ended the Amy and Rory? I really enjoyed the fact that they died by getting to live out their life together.
Yeah.
And the way they wanted to. I mean, you saw in the few episodes leading up to their departure that they were actually starting to pick normal life over their time-traveling life with the Doctor. You saw that they were starting to work on their actual life together, and this allowed them to do it. And it seems they were happy. I mean, they never actually tell you, but they both lived full lives.
Yeah, I mean, right from Asylum of the Daleks, they get collected and they're having issues because they, that part, I have issues with that whole thing, the whole issue that Amy and Rory were having.
Yeah.
I mean, one issue after another, and like if that doesn't put an insane amount of stress on a couple, but not communicating over the fact that she can't have kids and he wants kids, and that's what tears you apart.
Yeah.
I mean, she was locked inside the Pandorica, and he was guarding it for 2,000 years, which I have issues with that a little bit. But that was fine, but you can't be like... I mean, they decide to talk about it while they're in the asylum, when they're about to self-destruct the whole freaking planet, and now they decide to communicate. And it's like, I love you more than you love me, and I can't have kids, and that's why I thought... It's like... You just solved your problem.
Yeah.
Like, compared to everything else you guys have gone through, this was really, really stupid, and you guys had issues because of that?
That's why they were, like, on the verge of divorce, and it's...
Yeah, I don't know.
I thought that whole issue was just a waste of time. I thought they could have done without it. I didn't like it at all. It
wasn't necessary to anything, really. It was, like, what did that add to that episode?
Nothing. It just annoyed me. I didn't like it.
It didn't add anything in the future episodes. There was no, like, that could have never have happened, and nothing would have changed. Well, I would have liked Asylum of the Daleks a bit more, but other than that, story-wise, nothing would have changed.
One thing introduced... Well, first, before I go into this next thing, Asylum of the Daleks, we see Clara for the first time. She's a Dalek. She turned into a Dalek. I had issues with that, too, the whole... like something gets inside of them and turns them into a Dalek, because, I mean, the whole point of the Daleks is that they hate anything not Dalek. If you're not a pure Dalek, and they wouldn't be because they'd have human DNA, they'd be rejected, so why...
Right, like Dalek Sec, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that why they got rid of him? Because he wasn't pure Dalek?
Yeah, I mean, the Daleks were created by Dravos by manipulating the DNA of the inhabitant species of his planet on Skaro. And anything that's not pure Dalek is seen as needs to be destroyed and not perfect. So why would the Daleks have something that creates impure Daleks that they would later just want to destroy anyway?
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically like giving them power. They're giving them the power of the Daleks. They'll have the little arms, the lasers. I mean, the Daleks are pretty much impervious to anything except their own weaponry. So why would they give that to an enemy by turning them into one?
Yeah, and are they going to see them as equals?
But they wouldn't, because they wouldn't be pure Dalek. I mean, we've seen the episodes in the past where the Daleks destroyed non-pure Daleks.
Right. And then they brought back the Supreme Daleks, and now they're even, better than the other Daleks. So it's like you have your Supreme Daleks back, and then you have your other Daleks, and then now you're turning everything else into a Dalek. It's like... But you guys don't like non-pure Daleks. So what are you doing? You're going to replace the universe with non-pure... I mean, do they want to make more enemies?
I mean, maybe it was just a safety feature built into that planet. Because I know that the planet that they were sent to was a whole entire planet as the asylum or a jail cell for the Daleks that were too crazy for even the Daleks to accept.
Yeah.
But anyway, just... What happened was she was a Dalek, or a human that turned into a Dalek, and she was able to fight the Dalek instinct in her to want to exterminate, to save the Doctor, and she ended up wiping the Doctor completely from the Daleks database, and it ended up saving him. So that's just a quick recap on that. I needed to mention it because we're going to talk about Clara later. But what I wanted to get to is Rory's father. I loved his character. I kind of wish we had been introduced to him sooner, just because
I really liked
would
him.
like to see more of him. He was a very fun character, very funny. And I just think he brought a little bit of humor to the show that I think was lacking in the first half of the latest season. I mean, with the exception of the scenes with him, I kind of think the first half was lacking, and I really think they drew out Amy and Rory's departure too much.
Yeah, they did. It seemed like the first 5 episodes. We've been so used to these big story arcs and these big and then to the beginning of series 7, we were back to just one-off episodes. None of it had anything to do with each other at all, and it was like the first half kind of bored me. Like my biggest issue was the power of 3. Like these little black cubes that were appearing out of nowhere, and it was brilliant. It was like, what are these cubes? What are they going to do with these cubes? Where do they come from? What is there anything in them? Like, what is going on?
They never explained it properly.
No, and then literally the last 10 minutes of that episode, you find out who it is. You find out that it's this big mythical enemy I don't know the exact quote, but he says that they used to tell the story to young Gallifreyans to scare them, so that they would behave. It was like the Gallifreyan equivalent of the boogeyman.
But they never really explained why he was doing it, like what he was doing at Earth, like anything at all. Just like at the end, they just threw in an explanation for the boxes without even thinking.
Right. I mean, these boxes, they finally open up. There's a countdown. They open up, and everybody's heart stops. Everybody drops dead. Everybody around the entire planet. So you find out that there's a portal in a
Hospital.
elevator.
It just happens to be where Rory works.
Yeah, it was very conveniently located. So they get onto the ship. They find out that it's this big mythical enemy, this crazy villain that has been feared by young Gallifreyans, basically finding out that the boogeyman is real and this is it. And then the Doctor then waves his sonic screwdriver at some panels, reverses something in the cube, so now they trigger everybody's hearts to stop, because being dead for that long isn't going to have any major effects on your brain or anything. And then they run. And then the ship blows up, and that's that.
And that really is another issue I had, especially with some of the episodes in the 7th season, was the overplaying of the sonic screwdriver. And throughout the whole new Doctors from 9 to 10 to 11, the sonic screwdriver becomes a huge major part of the character. And it really, they used it too much as a crutch, I think, in this latest season.
They do. I think since the 9th Doctor they've used it. I've heard there's been how trying to explain to somebody who doesn't understand Doctor Who, trying to explain what the sonic screwdriver does.
Yeah.
I've seen a thing saying that a sonic screwdriver is a tool for fixing plot holes.
Yeah.
That's basically what it's become. I love the sonic screwdriver, but it can't always be the solution.
But literally, it was the very first time they introduced the sonic screwdriver to the 2nd Doctor. It was exactly what it said. It was a sonic screwdriver. It used sonic waves to remove screws. So the 2nd Doctor, he had something that was screws, but they didn't have any way to unscrew it with an actual screwdriver. They were just put in there. So he took out his sonic screwdriver and they just unscrewed out. And that's literally what it was originally used for.
Yeah, it's supposed to be an actual screwdriver.
Yeah, except it used sonic waves. And with the 3rd Doctor and 4th Doctor, they expanded a little bit to where it could unlock locks, basically. And it could do, with the 4th Doctor, later on could do a little bit with computers and stuff, and then they kind of just did away with it after the 4th Doctor up until the 9th. You see it for a little bit with the 8th. You see his sonic screwdriver when he's rumbling through a toolbox, but he never actually uses it. And then since the 9th Doctor, it's like an iconic thing. When you picture the Doctor now with the new Doctors, you picture him with the sonic screwdriver. I see you get a little screwdriver to demonstrate.
Yeah. And this one, the 9th and 10th Doctor sonic screwdriver, I guess. The pen. Then I have the 11th. I actually modified this one so that I can use it while it's open.
Yeah, I had the 11th one. I modified it so I could use it while it's open. and then I modified it again so I could flick it open and still use it while it's open or closed, and then I kept trying to modify it and eventually broke it.
This one's actually my wife's. This is the River Song sonic screwdriver.
Yeah, my wife wants me to get her that one.
I have the build your own sonic screwdriver, so I have all these little mismatched pieces, but basically I used it to build this one. I think this one I pieced it together with the build your own sonic screwdriver and the trans-temporal sonic screwdriver
The
kit.
trans-temporal one was cool. I always wanted to check that one out.
I put this one together because it seems like a good cross between the 10th.
Two of them.
Yeah, it's like it's got the same. This part's the same shape.
But it's blue.
It's just blue like the 10th Doctor's. It's the same, well, same size as this one.
Yeah.
But it's the blue and silver like this, but it has the little crystal and the size of that. And
It definitely is a good between the two.
yeah, my daughter likes this one. She likes to chew on this.
Yeah.
She plays with this all the time. She figures out how to work the button. But they use it way too much now. It's like they don't know, like, for everything. I mean, not wood, but you know, that's only a matter of time before we get to wood setting.
Yeah,
And then
it doesn't work on wood, which doesn't make sense because it's a sonic screwdriver. Why would sonic waves not work on moving wood?
yeah, I mean, I think it was something with the Cybermen during the 10th Doctor. He actually used the sonic screwdriver to burn rope. Why wouldn't it burn wood?
Yeah.
Now it works on wood.
And then also it doesn't work on apparently something called the deadlock. If something's deadlocked, it doesn't work, whatever that means.
Yeah, who knows?
I think that was just something added to the show to make it so that they could say, oh, he can't use his sonic screwdriver to get in. You know, I think that was just something added, so...
He could just say, I forgot my sonic screwdriver. He could check his pockets and, oh, I don't have it.
Yeah. But then also if they did that, he wouldn't be able to use it later on. Or maybe he's using it leading up to there, and then it's like, oh, now I can't get in. And it really is, the whole deadlock idea I think is better than not working on wood, because it's not like some advanced alien species you might be going up against is going to have a wooden door.
Yeah.
It's much more realistic. They're going to have some high-tech deadlock door that is going to resist the ability of a sonic device breaking in. So I really like that idea better than it doesn't work on wood.
Yeah.
I know we're taking up a lot of time. I kind of want to jump up to Clara. We never really learned her whole purpose, and I think she was really drawn out. A lot of people expected there to be a lot of mystery to Clara the whole way through, and really there was mystery with her in the Asylum of the Dialects, and then they kind of just added her as a companion, and she was just there, and then they brought back the mystery in the end. I mean, but basically the whole second half of the season was about finding out who Clara is. And again, if you don't know, tune out, because we're going to get to some spoilers. It all happens in the last episode. Pretty much the final episode brings us to the fields of Trenzalore. And previously we had seen Clara once in Asylum of the Dialects where she dies. She saves the Doctor, but she herself dies. And then we saw her again in the Christmas special where she saves the Doctor's life, but she herself dies. And then she runs into the Doctor again in, I don't remember the name of the episode, but the one following the Christmas special. Bells of St. John.
Yeah, Bells of St. John.
And then she becomes his companion, she's traveling with him, but it's always like, how did she save his life twice but die, but she's still there? And that was explained because they go to the fields of Trenzalore, where apparently that's where the Doctor's grave is. That's where he's buried. And what happened was she stepped into the Doctor's time stream. There's this big stream, like in the center of his dying TARDIS, and she steps into it, and it splits her consciousness and her reality all throughout the whole entire lives of the Doctor, and it shows you a bunch of images of like the classic Doctors in 9 and 10, and her there like watching over him and stuff. And she does it to protect him from the great intelligence who entered the time stream before the Doctor to try and kill him. And I thought it was a really good explanation for why she was always there, but I think they just jumped into it way too fast. They forgot all about the mystery of who is Clara during the second half of the season, and then they just brought it back up in the last episode. There weren't any like little subtle clues or anything. But it was a pretty good explanation, and one that I didn't see coming for why she was there. And then that brings us to John Hurt's doctor. I'll let you. That happened as soon as she stepped into the stream, and then the doctor went after her.
So they jump it, like the doctor jumps into his own thing, whatever that thing is. Looks like a big the scars that he's left every time he's traveled through time. So he jumps into his own. So that's when he's talking about how when they jump in there, it's basically killing them and splitting them into new anomalies. So I'm kind of wondering how that's gonna play into everything. Like Clara's basically now dead. She was just copied and scattered throughout time. Now the doctor jumped into his own time stream thing, whatever. So, I mean, maybe when it comes back for the special, it's gonna pick up right where it left off. But hopefully that kind of gets explained because, like he said, I mean, unless he was just trying to scare them into not doing it. But so she jumps in there, and while they're in there, she sees all the previous doctors. They're all running around. And then you see this other guy, this old guy. He's somebody that we haven't seen before. And he turns around and she's like, I haven't seen that one before. And he says that he's the one that broke the promise. And then so this guy, he turns around and he's like,
what I did in the name of sanity and something. And then the doctor goes, but not in the name of the doctor.
Right.
And to me, it's kind of a hint that it's basically he is one of the lives or one of the regenerations of the Doctor, but he isn't the Doctor. The Doctor doesn't see him as deserving of the title of the Doctor.
Basically, it's like the way I see it is, he's like if you look back at something that you did and it's like you did something bad, you did something wrong, and you're like that wasn't me. Why did I do that? This is like a huge, blown up, much more serious version of that. This was a whole chunk of his life, a whole regeneration where he did these horrible things, and he's like, that's not who I am. That's not, I can't. Do you remember in the episode where, the first episode with, I guess the second episode with the 11th Doctor, when the first one where he takes Amy out and they go to that sky city, the space city, Starship UK,
yeah.
And the whole star whale and everything, and at the end he's doing he basically has to decide whether kill this creature or kill everyone in the city, and he's like about to do something and he's doing something, he's like, and then I need to find a new name for myself because I'm not going to be the Doctor anymore.
Yeah. So
that's like he can see himself as like, if he does something terrible, then that's not the Doctor. He's like he said, I love what he was saying. He was saying that the name you choose is your promise
to yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
one thing.
He's the one that broke the promise.
One thing that I know confused a lot of people is the whole like couple seconds leading up to it. He's like, the name you choose is a promise you break to yourself, and then he's like, what you did was not in the name of the Doctor. He's not the Doctor, but he's me. And then at the very end, it says introducing John Hurt as the Doctor, and it's like after he just finished saying.
I think that's what confuses a lot of people, because they're like, oh, they can't just throw a Doctor in there, and then they're like, well, now the 9th Doctor is now the 10th Doctor, and it's like, no, that's his. That changes his incarnation.
Yeah.
It doesn't change the Doctor. Like that's why I was trying to specify that in the beginning about the regeneration versus the incarnation versus the Doctor. Now we're throwing in a third thing. You have your which regeneration you've used, which incarnation you've used, and which Doctor is it.
One thing, there's a lot of theories as to who he is. 3 popular ones. He's a future Doctor. Most popular is that he's a past Doctor, somewhere between 8 and 9. And then there's a Valeyard. I just want to quickly cover why I think he's not a future Doctor. And the reason why I think he's definitely not a future Doctor is because when the Doctor entered his time stream, Clara even said it herself, I've seen all of you, all 11 of you. And then, like, who's this guy? You only see 11th Doctors, but we know he's regenerating in Christmas special. We know there's going to be a 12th Doctor, so why didn't she see the 12th Doctor? Why didn't she see the 13th? There's going to be a 13th one. And that just leads me to think is, why would they show John Hurt if he's a future Doctor, but not anybody else? And what I think it is I think because, like he said, when he's killing himself by entering his time stream, I think when he entered his time stream, it ended his time stream, that like the scars of his time stream at the 11th Doctor, and you're not going to see anything past that. And I think whatever they do, however they escape or whatever they're going to do in the 50th, it's going to bring him out and like restart anew. But at that point, because he entered his own time stream, it ended his time stream at that regeneration. And that's why I think that it's very unlikely John Hurt is a future Doctor.
Right, and the other thing is, if he somehow comes out, he's now not same memories and everything, but he's not the same actual person that went in.
Yeah.
So do you think that they could use that as a way of saying, now you have new regenerations?
Definitely. It could definitely be like it starts over again. He has 13 fresh sets maybe or something.
Because whenever he comes out of there, because he's not that same being, that same entity that went in there and died, he's now a new entity coming out. He should be reset. There's a lot of things that's happened in the new series that could easily give him more regenerations.
And I also think that I know when the Great Intelligence went in there, it was split between his lives. And same thing when Clara went in. But I think it didn't happen to him because it is his life he entered. I don't think the time stream would split him amongst himself. I think that would be a good explanation to explain that away. But
otherwise, the 11th Doctor should have been there with every single past.
Yes.
So.
But I definitely think that might be a good way of explaining, giving him more lives, because I don't see them just being like, oh, that's it, we're at the 13th Doctor. It's been a good run, bye, folks.
Yeah, I mean, there are 50 years. I mean, how about 50 more? They could easily do that. Like, if you get tired of it, then guess what? There's a whole new generation of people who are now discovering it.
Exactly.
That's what's kept it around for this long. I mean, they could easily they have a River bringing him back to life with her regenerations. That could easily be explained as why he has more than
definitely
how many than the original regenerations. I mean, one line of that, they could easily say, oh, well, River gave me all her regenerations and now I have more. And most people would be like, all right, cool, works for me.
And then also, like, I mean, the show, I've seen on Google Plus 12-year-olds that shouldn't really be on that site, but I've seen 12-year-olds that love the show, and then I've seen people that are like 40 and love the show. I mean, the show is for any age. It really is. It's so enjoyable.
That's the other brilliant thing about the regeneration, is if it starts getting old and boring and dated, just regenerate, redesign the show, new TARDIS, new companions, new Doctor, new adventures.
There you go.
And if you look at all the past Doctors, you can look at any one of those Doctors at how their personality, their style, and you can be like, that one's from the 80s, that one's from the 70s.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see every single time he comes back, everything is renewed for a new audience. And with that kind of brilliant idea, and that's not something that's being forced on anybody. People know that when they watch the show, they're like, he could change at any time, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, and that really is a great thing about the show, and I really want to get to, now I know we're going, we both love this topic so much, I know we've been talking about it for a while, but we have the 12th Doctor coming up. It's been officially announced, we don't know who he is, but at the Christmas special this year, Matt Smith will be regenerating and will be introduced to the 12th Doctor. I don't know about you, I really don't want to do any speculation. I don't think any of our guesses would be right if we try to guess who's going to be the 12th Doctor.
No, I don't think anybody's going to come close, and I think that's the point. Personally, I would like to not know who it is until he regenerates.
Same here, but I mean, it's going to get announced because people are going to see on set and stuff when they're filming.
It's completely impossible for them to be able to do that, but I think the way I see it, the Doctor doesn't know what he's going to look like next. We shouldn't either. And I think that would be amazing to not be able to see. I mean, unless you're going to stay off the internet from now until then.
Yeah, which is unrealistic.
Yeah.
50th anniversary episode is coming out soon. A lot of people are excited about that. It's going to feature Matt Smith, the 11th Doctor, David Tennant, the 10th Doctor, and John Hurt is the mystery Doctor.
His 9th incarnation, but not the 9th Doctor.
We believe that's the most accepted theory.
So I would say that Christopher Eccleston is the 10th incarnation, but 9th Doctor. See, I also wanted to mention, I see so many people all the time saying it's the Valyard. And the Valyard was manifested between his 12th and final incarnation, so between 12 and 13. I mean, if that is who that is, then he's only at his 11th incarnation. He's between his 11th and 12th, which means it's not going to happen yet. If he is the Valyard, then he's only at the 12th, or he's only at the 11th incarnation. But if he's not the Valyard and he is a previous incarnation, then he actually is between the 12th and 13th.
Now, there's two things I want to go over real quick. But first off, later tonight, there will be the first official trailer for the 50th anniversary if you want to look that up and try to catch that. Now, as a spoiler for that, I actually just pulled up online here a description of the trailer. And again, very big spoiler alert, it basically admits John Hurt is going to be playing a past Doctor. And I'm going to read to you, it's just a note of what the very first thing is. It's Matt Smith walking the TARDIS with a voiceover where he says, "I've had many faces, many lives. I don't admit to all of them. There's one life I've tried very hard to forget." And then it says it glimpses the Doctor talking to Clara about his greatest secret. And it's a very big spoiler, but that trailer will be up in a few hours, so I'm just saying that you'll see that soon. But I think that right there, basically, he's admitting that this is going to be a past life.
Yeah. There was never a doubt in my mind that it was a past.
Yeah, same here. One other thing, and it's very, very unlikely, it could just be Stephen Moffat having some fun, but at Comic-Con, a fan asked at a panel, Stephen Moffat, why is Captain Jack not in the 50th special? And Stephen Moffat's answer was, how do you know who's in the 50th? I mean, maybe he's toying with us. Maybe there's going to be people we don't know about. And if there are, that's going to be very exciting. But definitely looking forward to that. Because if there's people they secretly snuck in there, even if it's for a little bit, like even if they like snuck Paul McGann on the set for like one day and just did a little recording really fast, you know, somewhere where they're on set and there's not paparazzi around to catch pictures of them filming off set or something, that would be awesome. Or even if they did get Captain Jack in there for a little bit, 'cause I know everybody loves him. But
I really wanted to see Jack with the 11th Doctor. I also really wanted to see Wilfred with the 11th Doctor.
Yeah, Wilfred was awesome. I know originally Captain Jack was actually written to be in the episode Good Man Goes to War, and something about he really wanted to do it, but he had prior obligations. Whereas this time, apparently, the show Arrow, which he has a few roles in every couple episodes, told him that if he wanted to be in the 50th, they would give him the time off. But apparently, whatever he was doing at the time of Good Man Goes to War, you're going to get the time off for it. That's going to bring us to our hat tip of the week. I mean, we covered all the Doctors. It was just a synopsis of our opinions and on each Doctor. We'll probably do more episodes later on. But my hat tip of the week is for Sonic Screwdriver Universal Remotes. For a while now, they've had out the 11th Doctor's Universal Remote. They just announced the 10th Doctor's. The links will be in the description below. Basically what it is it's solid metal. Apparently they made a special edition one that's gold-plated for the 11th Doctor, I heard. And it's a universal remote. You set it to your TV. You can control your TV with waves of the remote. There's 3 channels, each channel with 10 settings. So there's like a push forward, a pull back, flick left, flick right, up, down, and there's like clockwise, counterclockwise. And
I believe there's also tapping. Yeah, I think you can tap.
Yeah, I think that was the other two. Maybe the other two is tapping on one side or something. I don't remember there's 10 settings with 3 channels, and then there's also a sound setting where you can just set it to make sounds. And the great thing about it doesn't pop up, unfortunately, which is sad. But the great thing about it is, I mean, it's heavy. It feels more real than a plastic toy, and it still makes that wonderful sound. So that's my hat tip of the week. There's one for the 11th Doctor, and now there's also one for the 10th Doctor, apparently. And if it wasn't for the fact that my wife doesn't see that as an acceptable waste of $100, since they're about $100 each, I'd have them.
I definitely would, too. I think now that there's a 10th Doctor Sonic Screwdriver, I think maybe I could convince my wife if I get her the 10th Doctor one, but probably not for a very long time.
Possibly.
So my hat tip of the week is it's a website. It's called Sherman's Planet. It's it's completely fan-made Gallifreyan writing. This person, they made a program where you can actually type in a name, a word, whatever, and it'll generate on screen what it would look like if it was written in Gallifreyan. They completely made up the writing. There aren't any copyright issues or anything with the show, because it actually looks very different than what you see on the show. But it actually, I have a thing around here somewhere.
Now I do have a question about that. I didn't get a chance to check out your link yet. Does it make it circular Gallifreyan? Is that what it does?
Yeah. So here's a little thing I made at work. I did a little laser engraving. that
Yeah.
actually says risk it in circular Gallifreyan. But there's a PDF and there's a chart and it's showing you there's basically different types of characters. There's like half circle, almost a full circle, then a full circle. You can add accents to it, like it's a full circle by itself, or a full circle with a line, or 2 lines, or 3 lines, or a dot, or 2 or 3 dots. Or when I use it, I use the program because the thing about like this circular Gallifreyan is that it's not like where there's only one set way of doing it. It's kind of like you kind of have to have some kind of artistic quality to it. You have to make it fit within the circle, and then you have to be kind of creative with interlocking your circles to create a full sentence. So the program can only do so much. It can't do full sentences. It can do words at a time. But I use the program to generate an idea of what it looks like, and then I'll look at the little chart and double check and everything, and then I kind of throw it into a separate program and kind of rearrange it, because you got to kind of move things around to try to get it to fit in there. As you're adding letters, you're running out of space in the circle. It's really fun to play around with because there isn't like a set way of doing it. It's kind of like you get to have fun with trying to figure out how to piece the words together and the shapes together, and then trying to arrange them. It's a writing system that you can design and create. And
on the circular Gallifreyan, in the show, the TARDIS, it translates real-time both spoken and written words for the travelers in the TARDIS. But for the Time Lords, they have 3 written languages: Gallifreyan, High Gallifreyan, and Circular Gallifreyan. Gallifreyan, first off, the TARDIS does translate. We see that in the episode where River wrote "Hello, Sweetie" on like some cliff face in the universe, which is like supposedly the oldest writing in the world, or the oldest writing in the universe. And then we see High Gallifreyan, where she carves a message for the Doctor on the like black box thing from the Weeping Angels episode. It was like the 3rd episode into the 11th Doctor. And then Circular Gallifreyan, also, that one is probably my favorite because it seems, everything in the universe is circle. I mean, circle's like the perfect shape. You see suns, you see planets, you see moons. Everything ends up in that circular shape. And it's just so, it seems fluid the way they've always displayed it in the show, kind of like, almost like time, and that's what they are, as time travelers. The TARDIS
looks a lot like the inside of a watch. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I did see that. It looks like the gears inside a watch almost.
Yeah,
you
which
open
is
up
perfect.
like a pocket watch or something. But no, the TARDIS though does not translate High Gallifreyan or Circular Gallifreyan. So I guess it's sort of like a safety feature. If they're going somewhere and they want to communicate in that, someone that's traveling with them in the TARDIS or gets into the TARDIS won't now be able to read what they're saying or writing.
Yeah, so somebody hijacks TARDIS, now they can't kind of unlock the secrets of the Time Lords because now they can read everything.
Yeah.
I have a sample here. Here's an example of something I wrote with using the circular Gallifreyan, and then I threw it up into Photoshop and everything. So this is there's a page that I became an administrator of on Facebook, and it's a little thing I've been doing over on Google Plus. It's called David Tennant in Places He Shouldn't Be, and it's basically photoshopping David Tennant from a screenshot of The Runaway Bride, where he's kind of running and he has his arm up in the air. We kind of Photoshop him into all kinds of ridiculous things.
You should do those more often. I really enjoy when you post those.
Yeah, I've actually been kind of behind on some of them, and I try to remember to do them occasionally. And when there's new episodes and everything, I like to try to edit them into like new episodes, try to get a little crossovers. I like to edit them into like old classic series and then like some of the newer episodes. But here you can see in the big circle, it's one complete sentence, and you kind of have free range. You can make these lines extend to wherever you want and try to interlock them. It starts where languages, they start top to bottom, left to right, or whatever, and some languages are right to left or up to down. And circular Gallifreyan, you start at the bottom of the circle. So the first word in the sentence is, and if you were looking at it as a clock, it would be in the 6 o'clock position. And then you start going to the right, and you come up around to the left, and then you spiral inwards. So it'll actually create a spiral going into the center of the word. So it'll start and then kind of goes like that, and then into the middle of the word. And then over on the right side, I have the names of the 3 administrators and of the page. So there was the top one is, I believe that's Stormageddon, which was one of the administrator names. and then the middle one was Harkness. That was the other person, the other administrator's name, and then the bottom one is Riskett. That was for my administrator name. There's a lot of creativity you can have with it.
And that brings us to the end of our Doctor Who through the years. If you enjoy Doctor Who, definitely keep tuned because we're going to be doing more. And next week's episode is on Linux, so if you're interested in that, tune in next week.
Definitely we're going to have some more Doctor Who episodes because this one ran really long, and I think we need to... There's some things we skipped over, so we're going to save that for future stuff. All right, see you next week.
All right.